In this video, let's see how to make this urban diagram within 10 minutes using SketchUp and Photoshop. Along with that, we will also see how to make people brushes like these in Photoshop. Let's jump straight into the video. I downloaded this model from 3D Warehouse. The creator of this model is Matteo Ballerin. I will leave the link for the model and his profile in the video description. You can download and follow along with the video. Open the model in SketchUp and choose an angle which suits you, and go to camera and make sure to turn on parallel projection. This helps in achieving the diagrammatic look. Once you are happy with an angle, go to the scenes tab on right and click on this plus icon to save it as a new scene. Now we have to create or export these 5 images which will be the base for our diagram. Click on the V-Ray asset editor. When you are going to work, tune into these settings for easy and quick renders. Once we are finalized, we can change the settings before rendering it. So click on the gear icon, make the quality as low or low plus depending on your system spec. In camera, you don't have to change anything here. In render output, make the image width and height as 800 to 450. Then turn on material override option and change the color into off-white or even white. If you want, you can change the direction of the shadows before rendering it. Then hit this icon to render. If you can see here, the shadows are very sharp. You can change that by going to the lighting tab, click on the sunlight and increase the size multiplier to 90 or 100. Now hit render and you will get the realistic soft shadows. If you think the sun is too bright, you can also reduce the sun's intensity. Once you are happy with the result, go to the render settings tab and change the quality to high, and in camera change the image width to 2000 and turn on the denoiser. Now hit render. It might take few minutes to render a high quality image, but we are done with the clear render. You can save the render by clicking on this save icon and close V-Ray. Go to view, edge style and turn off edges and export only the shadows. Make sure that every face is in white color. Go to file, export and 2D graphics. Choose where you want to save. But before clicking export, go to options and change the image size to 2000 pixels and hit OK. Now you can export the image. Next, go to view, edge style and turn on edges and turn off the shadows. Click on the styles panel on the right and go to default styles and select the hidden line. Export this line drawing. I wanted to export this railroads alone in a separate image. So I hid all the other elements in the model except the railroads. You can also save this as a separate scene, so you don't have to do this all over again anytime in future. Export this too in the same way we did the previous images. Last but not least, the image with the color palette we want for the diagram. Go to scene 1. I want to highlight a few buildings in this model. I already have a color palette in mind. If you have any doubts or problem with selecting a color palette, you can go to colors.co. Here you can start generating a color palette within seconds. Use the arrows to navigate through the palettes and copy the color code directly into Photoshop. Now we need to bring this color code into SketchUp. I already exported PNGs of the individual colors I have in my color palette. Click on create material and use texture image and select the color you want and click OK. Apply the new material where you want. In the same method, I created another new material and applied it to the buildings that I wanted to highlight. Then go to view and turn off shadows and edges and export this image. Let's move to Photoshop. Drag all these images into one file and start overlaying them. And make sure they are aligned properly. Scale them to match if necessary. You can use the shadow image we exported to help in aligning the clay render. I don't know when my shadow became sharp in the clay render, but we should be using the one with the soft shadows. Once you are done aligning, hide all the other layers except the faces and clay render. You can change the overlay mode of the clay render to multiply. You can also reduce its opacity to reduce its intensity. Drag the lines layer above the clay render and change its overlay to multiply and reduce its opacity to around 20%. Bring the railroad above now. I wanted to change the lines into this color. So I created a solid color adjustment layer in that specific color and started playing with overlay options. I'm going to stick with overlay. Then I merged the two layers and started trying out different overlay options of the railroad image. The reason I like to experiment this much with overlay options is because we might end up with unexpected results which we wouldn't have thought about at that time. For example, something like this. But for now, I'm going to keep the railroads alone in blue color. Let's start to add some callout bubbles to name the buildings. Using the rectangle tool, draw a black rectangle and round its edges. Then using the lasso tool, draw a pointer and fill it with black and merge these two shapes. I started labeling these buildings as station 1, 2 as I don't know what's the actual name of the buildings are. Then select the shape and text and hit Ctrl J to duplicate and move it over to other buildings. You can even flip these shapes if you want according to its placement. Then I labeled the water body. Right click and select Distort to adjust the perspective of the text to match with the image. Now let's move to populating the scene with some people. You guys must have seen these people illustrations by Architectury in Instagram. I wanted to create Photoshop brushes for something similar to it. So open a new Photoshop file of 4000 by 4000 pixels. Drag a person cutout into the file. Scale it to the full extent and using the curvature pen tool, start tracing it but with very minimal points as needed. Then you can overlay a grunge texture and change the overlay option to lighten. Then select the shape layer and go to Edit, Define Brush Preset. Give it a name and click OK. You can follow the same method to create multiple people brushes. Go to the main Photoshop file, create a new layer and select the brush you want. Then click on the brush settings and increase the spacing. Then turn on scattering and increase the scatter value. Select a suitable brush size and start painting it by dabbing and dragging lightly. I brought in a grunge texture and covered the water body by duplicating it. I merged them into a single layer. Bring it above the base image and change the overlay to linear dots. You can always choose whichever option suits you and your texture. I also added a heading to the image. I have also attached all the fonts I have used in this video. This is the final result. I later softened the shadow in the clay render and resized the people too. Hope you all found something useful. See you all in the next video.